Reconstruction is the period of U.S. history between 1873 and 1877 during which the nation recovered from the American Civil War. During this period, America faced serious economic, social, and political problems that resulted from the Civil War. By April 1865, the nation had lost over 620,000 men in the war, and yes, these figures are approximate. The 620,000 figure that exceeds the casualty count for Americans in all other wars, from the American Revolution to the Vietnam conflict combined. The South, the Confederacy, lost over 258,000 men, much more drastic percentage-wise. Meanwhile, the North lost over 360,000 men. Entire communities disappeared, both in the North and the South, as none of the men returned home for the war. You see, the way this works is that both sides, the North and the South, arranged their units by location. So if an entire unit got destroyed in a battle, for example, at Gettysburg, that entire community lost all its men and boys. On April 10, 1865, diarist George Templeton Strong reflected on the surrender at Appomattox, and he wrote that the war can bother and perplex none but historians henceforth forever. I like to add to Strong's comment, the Civil War also bothers and perplexes college history students. Physical damage was especially widespread in the South. The Civil War was a preview of modern warfare, as things like Sherman's March to the Sea cut a path of destruction 60 miles wide from Atlanta, Georgia to Savannah, Georgia. Tactics used by both the Union and the Confederacy that devastated the South include scorched earth tactics, guerrilla warfare, and siege warfare. Scorched earth tactics involved destroying anything that might be useful to the enemy while advancing to or withdrawing from an area. This included the towns, the farms, the animals, and, my personal favorite, the railroad ties. Guerrilla warfare included some of the famed tactics of John Mosby in the Shenandoah Valley of West Virginia. Mosby fought for the Union, or the tactics of Nathan Bedford Forrest, who fought for the Confederacy. Forrest used guerrilla warfare in Tennessee, Kentucky, and Mississippi. Siege tactics, such as those employed by General Grant, were employed at Vicksburg, Mississippi, and at Petersburg, Virginia, just to drain Confederate resources and to force people to either starve or quit. Fact is, in the American Civil War, simple farms became battlefields. Later, they became national monuments. And as you'll see when we get to World War I, the Civil War really is a preview of modern-day warfare. It did not matter to the soldiers whether the farm or building that they were destroying belonged to a rich person or to a poor person. Industry that existed in the South before the war was ruined, unless it happened to be in Texas. Because I can tell you, the Union tried to capture Texas 4 times. That's right, 4 times. But failed each time. Confederate currency and bonds, they had no value. The truth is, any person who chose to invest in the Confederacy, a country that was not recognized by any foreign nation as a sovereign nation, the Confederacy, whose main army, the Army of Northern Virginia, was defeated on the battlefield, and the Confederacy, whose government was arrested and then put in prison, well, if you chose to invest in that country, you're just out of luck. Economically speaking, the South, who had more millionaires than the North before the war, their primary labor investment was just wiped out. And that's approximately $4 billion wrapped up in slaves. Now, the slaves were liberated by the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863 and by the 13th Amendment, as ratified in December 1865. The rest of the South's liquid capital, the rest of their money, went to support the war effort. The South, put bluntly, by the end of the American Civil War, was broke. The South had agricultural problems as well in their economy. This is where most of them made their money. The Civil War reduced the market for Southern cash crops, such as cotton, sugar, and tobacco. As both North and Europe, developed new economic markets to satisfy their demands. What I'm trying to say here is that the South thought at the beginning of the war that, oh, Great Britain and France will come to our side because they're going to need our cotton, they're going to need our tobacco. Instead, Great Britain and France figured out how to grow cotton in India and figured out how to grow cotton on the banks of the Nile in Egypt. Thus, the South, post the American Civil War, has to either find new markets for these crops or to diversify their economy. This dilemma they won't resolve until after World War II. The significance of all these factors is that economic growth is hampered in the American South. The freeing of the slaves, the destruction of property, and the collapse of land values left many planters homeless and broke. Gone to Texas was revived as a common slogan as some left their old homesteads in the East to start over in Texas. Meanwhile, refugees roamed the land. In addition to poor white farmers who had been displaced out of their homes by the Union Army, these refugees also included freed slaves, now called the freedmen, who had left a plantation to start a new life or to simply find family members. Confederate Southern governments were deposed at all levels, from the Justice of the Peace to the President Jefferson Davis. This creates a power vacuum in the South. This picture I've painted for you leads to questions that the nation needs to answer in the immediate aftermath of the American Civil War.